And it's because I sucked at these 5 things that the company's revenue went backwards. And I will take full responsibility for that, even with the team that we had. All right, friends, welcome back to the Jennifer Allwood Show. Thank you for being here today. In full disclosure, okay, so I'm recording this on the weekend in Kansas City, where we live. We are in the middle of the frozen tundra, middle of a snowstorm. I think we've got, oh gosh, I mean, this much ice if you're watching on YouTube. It's probably less than an inch, but any amount of ice is dangerous. We've got about 6 inches of snow. And we're expecting about 6 more today. So kids are out of school tomorrow. Normally I would record this on a Monday, but because the kids are out of school tomorrow, and then we'll be doing some traveling this week, I'm like, let me record it today. But I want you to know how much I love you. Okay. The reason I love you in 2 ways. Okay. Number one, I just need you to know that when we have a snow day like today, whether it's on a weekend or weekday, like I don't get out of jammies. Okay. I don't put on makeup. I don't put on new earrings for my husband. I don't do that. Okay. I stay in pajamas, no bra. We watch movies, we eat popcorn, I made pepperoni bread this morning. So just know that I love you enough that I'm doing a podcast, period. Okay. Number two, I love you enough that I'm doing a very vulnerable podcast episode. Because sometimes I just think that, well, I know for me, sometimes I wish I knew what was happening with other people in their business. I wish that I knew like what to believe and what not. I've done podcast episodes before on like smoke and mirrors. And when people are telling you they're having $5 million launches, a lot of them aren't telling you they're spending $3 million that on, paying their affiliates. Like sometimes the way business owners in the online space position things, they can certainly make things look one way. And I think until I really started knowing a lot more people, getting to know a lot more business owners in different masterminds and things that I belong to, and then watching their content, for a while, because I'm just a really honest, truthful person, I just assumed that everything that I was seeing, on the interwebs was the real deal. And turns out it's not. It turns out there are a lot of people who make things look a certain way when the truth is that, behind the scenes, things are a hot, stinking mess, or, it's almost like that meme, like what you see above water is this, but what you see underwater is, just complete chaos. And so I've tried to make a very intentional effort to be honest with my clients, to be upfront, even if I've never coached you before and you've just only listened to my podcast, which by the way, why? But there's that. But I've tried to make sure that I let you guys hear like the real deal enough so that, number one, I think it helps build trust. Number two, then I never have to worry about like, because sometimes I'm like, okay, these people that I know are full of BS. Like, do they understand they're having to kind of keep up those pretenses, right? And I just wonder, it's all tied to ego, and I really want to lay my ego down, and I really want to like not run this company from a place of ego. Because it's dangerous. It's dangerous to me. It's dangerous to you as my clients. It's dangerous to my team. And it's not what God has for me. It's not God's best for me. So, with that being said, I'm doing a really vulnerable podcast episode today. And that's how you also know that I love you. A, I'm doing it during a snow day. Two, I'm going to really give you a peek behind the scenes. So, here is the real deal. I am not at all happy with how my coaching business turned out for the year 2024 in terms of revenue. I'm not. We went backwards. And, I started this online business. Let's just say 12 years ago, could be 11. Okay. But I don't have a calculator and a calendar in front of me. So 11 or 12 years ago. And I've only had one other year where we went backwards. And I don't like it. I don't like it. Now, in full disclosure, let me just adjust this camera just slightly on YouTube. Okay. Hang on. Easton's going to be like, Mom. And I'll be like, it's fine. But I just feel like, there we go. There we go. I just feel like the angle of that was just slightly off. There we go. Now I feel better. Okay. Let's say probably even a year ago, the Holy Spirit really convicted me that while I was uber focused on overall revenue and then revenue per quarter, revenue per month, all the things. The Holy Spirit convicted me one day, Jennifer, what would happen if you focused less on the number of the revenue and you focused more on the number of women that I'm bringing to you to serve and to teach and to help and, to equip? What would happen if instead of you trying to get 100 people, or $500,000 launch, what would happen if instead of focusing on that, Jennifer, you focused on how can I help 500 women with this new program that I have, which could change 500 families, which feels just like so like weighty, but in a good way. You know what I mean? So I want you to know that when I'm talking about like revenue, like I understand that that's not the only indicator of health in a business. It's also not the only thing that we're to focus on. It's also really, when you're looking at just like the overall number in a company, sometimes that is super, what word do I want to use here? Lord help me. Um, if we focus too much on the high number, it doesn't give the full picture. Because if I have a $4 million year in revenue in my coaching company, but my expenses are 2 million, then I'm literally making 2 million for the year, right? But if I have a $3 million year, but my expenses are only $500,000 and I've made 2.5 million. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't want to focus so much on the overall revenue number, but revenue is a really good way to just determine that you have an actual business and not just a really expensive hobby. And the truth is, I'm super competitive when it comes to my business, not competitive with other entrepreneurs in my space. I'm really competitive with me. I'm really competitive with what we did the year before. And I know that there's some ego attached to that, but I'm just sharing with you like in full transparency. And so, if when you're someone who is pretty competitive, who has had business go up, 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 up. And by the way, like I started my painting company back in the year, what? 2000. I kind of started messing around with it in 1999, which sounds like 5 decades ago, by the way. But in the year 2000 was the first year that I like had a company name. We filed taxes, and I remember I made almost $100,000 my first year in business, and my painting company was going up, up, up every year too. So if you look at like 2 years going backwards in 25 years, like that made me mad. Backwards to like compared, to the year before. And so I sat down this week and I told my team, I want to do a really vulnerable podcast about like me looking back over 2024 because I've been reflective, wanting to kind of see, I'm not going to say where I went wrong, but what did I really stink at last year that led us to the revenue going backwards? Where am I directly responsible? Me, Jennifer Allwood, as the CEO of this coaching company, as, the team leader, all the things like, what did I do poorly that caused the company to go backwards in revenue? My hope is that number one, if you didn't have the year you wanted in revenue, that you're not going to feel alone. And that number two is that it will be just a helpful reminder to both me and to you, that A, I want to lead by example, but that B, sometimes it's just getting back to the very basics. It's the things that we already know. But it was not hard at all, you guys, for me to sit down and in 3 minutes flat, like literally be like, okay, these are 5 things that I stunk at in 2024 when it came to my business. And it's because I sucked at these 5 things that the company's revenue went backwards. And I will take full responsibility for that, even with the team that we had. And so let me just jump right into this. And again, my hope is that this is really helpful for you. Okay. So first thing I did really, really poorly in the year 2024 is I was really like reactive as a business owner and not very proactive. I could tell in October of 2023 that 2024 was going to be a different year in business. In fact, I might have even done a podcast on it because normally our quarter fours, especially in the coaching space, are just they're really, really good. There are, if we're going to have $1 million quarter, we're going to have $1 million quarter in quarter four. And I could tell in October of 2023 that there were things shifting. And I don't know if I knew this, based on numbers or, just discernment from the Holy Spirit, probably both. But I knew then that things were shifting. What I should have done is prepared better for the shifts before we hit 2024, instead of just feeling like I played catch up all year long. Okay. Because I felt like in 2024, I did a lot of like addressing things after the fact. I should have been more pushy with my team in some areas. There were some staffing changes that I knew in my knower that we really needed to change. There were some positions that I really knew that we needed to change. And I really just kind of like leaned back on my haunches. Is that like a, is that something my dad would say? Like I just kind of like rested back on my haunches. Is that the saying? If you're on YouTube, comment below. Is that the saying? I rested on my haunches, and basically like kind of pushed pause on some things to see how they played out versus like hitting them direct. And there's such a huge difference in business when there is a problem, and by the way, a problem doesn't have to be a big, glaring, major 911 fire. Okay. As a human, as a believer, as a business owner, like when something's just a little not right or a little off, right? And sometimes I think that peace is more important to me than addressing things. Sometimes I think that in my attempt to let my team handle things and really wanting to give them autonomy, that there were some areas where I should have just said, hey, this is what I see and this is what I want to happen. But instead, I kind of waited. And that's all on me. A lot of that also comes from me just not loving confrontation. And for those of you who are Enneagram threes, which is so many business owners, it's so many of us business owners. I find that the majority of business owners, to me, they either usually come up as an Enneagram 3 or an Enneagram 8 over half the time. And an Enneagram 8 will go go walk straight into confrontation, right? That's my husband. That's Mr. Magic. He'll walk straight into a hard discussion. Me, I'm like trying to fluff things up, beat around the bush, thinking for 2 weeks on how we can have this conversation, thinking how to not hurt feelings, trying to think of how I can fluff things up. And that ends up putting me in a really reactive position and playing like defense versus playing offense. And you could talk to any you know, football coach, basketball coach, anybody that's like a team coach, and they will tell you there are times for defense, but your offense, like you got to go for some stuff. You need to put some points on the board. And I played very defensive business in 2024 versus offensive. And the truth is, being more proactive and addressing things really more head on and having hard conversations and looking at the numbers earlier and looking at them in a different way and cutting back on team or expenses or programs or whatever, that may be hard, but what it does end up doing is giving you a much better sense of control. And because what happens when we're on the defensive is we feel like things are kind of unraveling and out of control. And I felt like that a lot last year. And I let my mind go to places that they didn't need to go. You know, everything's falling apart. It was not falling apart. Still hasn't going to fall apart. Isn't going to fall apart. But for some reason last year, I just chose to be more reactive than proactive. There's a lot of things that I can tell you were reasons why. A lot of things going on in our personal life. Like Jason had hopefully his last hip surgery, in January. We had a kiddo get engaged. We just purchased a third short-term rental. Like there was a lot of things like that, like not negative, marriage or children things, but just things that were vying for my attention. And when your attention is in the wrong place, it will often result in lower revenue. So that's one thing. Okay. Number two thing, I wish I hadn't tried so many new things in 2024. Because what it did is it diluted me focusing on and my clients focusing on the things that actually generate revenue. And the truth is, upon further reflection, if I can be really honest, and this is kind of hard to say, but like, even if I wanted to shift slightly away from coaching as I have done in the past with, mastermind programs, launches, membership group, courses, because I've got all the things in the past, right? God hasn't released me from this yet. And so I did a lot of like daydreaming and just dreaming about different things last year that while daydreaming can be really beneficial and helpful, it also really caused me to not focus on the right things. And, where you focus, you follow. So I think that most business owners, if you truly are a business owner ordained by God to run a business, if that is one of your seven mountains of influence is in the business realm, if you're unfamiliar with that seven mountains of influence, you need to learn that, because God calls us all to at least one major mountain, whether it's in business, entertainment, education. I think it's arts and entertainment, family, government. I can't remember the rest. If you're on YouTube, tell me what I forgot. But we're all called to at least one mountain, okay? And I know in this season and for the last 12 years, God has called me to the mountain of business, and I have not been released from that yet. But last year, what I did a lot is I daydreamed and I had shiny object syndrome, and it spread me thin. Okay. Let me give you like one good example. Several months ago, I came to my team and I'm like, okay, people keep asking me about starting their first short-term rental or how to get into, doing Airbnbs. And Jason and I just bought our third one in October, bougie in Miramar Beach, just right outside of Destin, Florida. And, I feel like um, while I'm not an expert in that area, I've also always told my clients, you don't have to be an expert. You have to just be a little bit further ahead than the people you're coaching, right? So with enough people asking me about getting into short-term rentals, I was like, okay, what could I teach these people? Not the financing part or anything like that. Like that's my friend Teresa Todd. That's Brian Turner. That's not me. But what I could teach them is how to take a property that needs a facelift and how to get it ready for your first guest within 6 weeks, how to totally do a remodel, a redecorating, et cetera, in 6 weeks. What do you need, et cetera. So literally, you guys, about 6 weeks ago or so, I sit down one weekend and I write out an entire course. I write out an entire course beginning to end of what I was going to teach you guys about how you can get into the short-term rental business in terms of like getting your first one after, from the point of purchase, actually from the point of you putting an offer in, that's where it started, on a property, to the point of you having your first guest. What do you need to do in that period and how to decorate it, etc. I wrote the whole course out, you guys. I wrote it all out. And then I had to hit pause because, in chatting with my team and really having some conviction and having some mentorship from both peers, people that are, on the same level in business as me, but also mentors, I just was reminded that I was being distracted. They all had to remind me, like, Jen, yeah, you could do that, but should you do that? Okay, someone might need to hear that today. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because I do have, 100 people or something that would take that course from me doesn't mean that I should. Because what it does is it like waters things down for both me and for my audience and for my team. And the truth is, like, my friend Laura Meyer, she was like, you've never even like vetted that idea. And I'm like, oh yeah. I haven't. Like all the other things that I have, my mastermind, my equipped software, which we have well over like 500 users for, my membership group, like we've had those things around for years, right? Those are vetted. I know basically what I can kind of expect. Yes, we've tweaked things, changed things, but like that's all tried and true. I know people will sign up and pay for. She was like, this is something brand new. What you doing, Jen? And I'm like, I know. And I had to kind of be reminded. And I also had to remind myself and I had to coach myself. I had to coach myself like I have coached my clients in the past. Just because something is hard doesn't mean that it's bad. And just because business gets hard doesn't mean that I'm to shift. And that's what I would tell any single one of my clients. Just because things are hard, revenue isn't, where it used to be. It doesn't mean it's time to shift. It doesn't mean it's time to do something new. Just because I'm bored doesn't mean I'm supposed to be doing something new. Just because I have an idea, that doesn't mean it's a now idea. You guys, I'm telling you, like, I think I even have mentioned this in podcasts before. I often feel like God gives me words 4 to 5 years ahead of when those things actually happen. It was 4 to 5 years before we got Ari. I knew in my knower, we're going to get her. She's not through a traditional, adoption placement service. I knew 4 to 5 years before, we made our first million. that God told me that you'll be a millionaire. I knew that 4 or 5 years. I remember I wrote it in my Bible because I was in church the day the Lord said it to me. And then sometimes I found myself over the years getting really frustrated because I don't see the fruit of what I've heard from the Holy Spirit like immediately. But I've learned that a lot of times, like, God will give me something, possibly almost as like preparation. But I don't see like the fruit of that. I don't see it come to fruition for years and years and years. And, I had this idea for the short-term rental thing, and I'm like, I'm just getting ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. And it really did not align with what my mission is for this season. It really doesn't align with like, and then I was trying to figure out like, how can I tweak that so it does align? I could offer it to business owners only. Hey, business owners, if you have some extra income, you should totally buy your first Airbnb because it's a huge tax savings. But then I was like, okay, I'm trying to make like a square peg fit into a round hole, and it just doesn't. And so I really had to go back to like, is this idea, does it line up with the season, the call of my life from God in terms of business right now? Is this my core mission? Does this line up with what I want to do a few years from now? And I really had to get back to the idea of saying no. And that means to myself sometimes, so that we could get the business, back up again in 2025 to where I want it to be. And so I wish I hadn't like not daydreamed and brainstormed, but gotten so distracted by other ideas in 2024, because that's a second thing that I think really cost us some revenue. Third thing, this is hard to say. Can I just say that this whole podcast feels hard to say, but I wish I had showed up for my team meetings more with all of the incredible women who work for me. And so, can I tell you first why I didn't so that I don't sound like such a jerk? Okay. One of my goals for last year in 2024 was that I was getting out of a lot of extra groups. I got out of two masterminds that I love both of them, but I got out of both of them because I knew that in the month of January, Jason was going to be having another hip surgery. And I knew I wouldn't be able to do any traveling. I needed to be available only to him. That was my focus, etc. And then I had this epiphany one day that why do I like some of these business groups that I've been in for years so much? Well, it's because I love to travel. I love to go new places, and I love to be around like-minded women. Okay. That's the truth. But then I thought, okay, I don't have to actually like fly in order to do that, right? I'm on Marco Polo all the time with Christy Wright, who I love and is just absolutely dear to me, talking about business, and we're not seeing each other in person. I mean, last time we did was a couple of years ago. And so I also had this epiphany, like, even though Jen, you love to travel, the truth is you don't want to travel for business. You want to travel for pleasure. And when I had that epiphany, I was like, you're right. And I'm paying to be in these masterminds again, which were good and fabulous, but they were more phone calls every month. And I wanted less travel for work, more travel for pleasure. And I wanted less meetings on my calendar every month. Listen, those of you that are youngish, okay, because I'm still young at 53, right? But I can tell you, like, I just don't want to do meetings anymore. I don't want to be, even when they're good, like they could be good and me still just not want to do them, right? So I didn't want to do a bunch of meetings. I just wanted more margin. And so in intending to just give myself more margin, I just began skipping a lot of our Wednesday team meetings. And then before I know it, it would be a month before I'd be at a team meeting. Maybe I would have traveled. And by the way, I got this email from Southwest Airlines the other day that I flew with them 34 times last year. That's a lot of flights, you guys. Considering I used to be a white knuckle flyer, considering I didn't get on my first airplane until I was 25 or 26 years old. I was engaged to Jason at the time, so 25. And I had 34 flights on Southwest Airlines last year. It's not including Delta, American. I fly them very rarely, but I did fly both of them last year. And so I did a real good job of flying for pleasure and not flying for work. Let me just say that, okay? And I did a real good job of getting myself out of all those meetings. But what ended up happening is it affected communication within the team. I think it affected team morale. I think it affected progress on projects. I think it affected the bottom line. Because the truth is, as a leader, there is such a ripple effect. And if I was making light of the need for attendance, if I wasn't making communication a priority, if I wasn't making team a priority, and if I wasn't demonstrating that for the women that work for me, like I can't be surprised then that they pick up on that. And I'm not saying that my team did anything wrong last year. Okay. So let me just put that out there. This is me throwing no shade on my team because they are freaking amazing. But I should have just showed up because the message that it sends is just different. Sometimes it's not what we say, but it's so much how we make people feel, right? It's not often even what we do, but sometimes it's what we don't do that sends a very strong message. And I'm afraid that with me not showing up for team meetings, the message I was sending my team was, this isn't important to me. You're not important to me. The work is no longer important to me. I'd rather be anywhere else. And that's not the case. But that's, I think, what my lack of attendance showed them. Not that any of them have even said that. They may all listen to this and be like, no, Jen. I may be like, well, as I thought about why is revenue down in 2024, that was one of the things that the Lord brought to my mind. I was very laissez-faire about showing up for anything. I like that. I just, because I didn't want to. And I keep telling myself, you're 53. If you don't have to, don't. Anything that you just think, oh, I should, you don't have to do. And while there can be some truth and value to that, there's also truth and value to showing up to the things that maybe, even if I don't want to, are important to my team. I mean, attendance matters. I know our Pastor Philip, often says that just like presence matters. You may not feel like getting up and going to church, but your presence matters. It matters to the pastor that he looks out and sees, a congregation full. It matters to the worship team who, doesn't want to be up there just singing to themselves. Like our presence is important. And I failed my team in not going to the meetings. What that also did is there was not enough accountability. And, Jason used to be my boss. Scandalous, I know. Back in our 20s. Okay. So when I was like waitressing and bartending, gasp, she bartended. I did. I was terrible at it. You want to know why I was bad at bartending, by the way? Is because people would sit down at my bar. They would want to tell me their problems. And I would literally, like, there was a couple people, I looked at them and I'm like, I hear what you're saying about your marriage. And I'm telling you, the problem is that you're here and you're talking to a young bartender instead of going home and talking to your wife. Like if you'd go home and do that, you'd probably be okay. And so needless to say, I didn't do great at bartending, but I was a really great waitress. And Jason was my boss. So I saw him, before he came home from corporate America 6 or 7 years ago. He, led a team, had people, et cetera. He was a fabulous manager. And, but he would always say to me, Jennifer, you need to inspect what you expect. You need to inspect what you expect. And when I quit going to all the team meetings, I also quit looking closely at some of our numbers, some of our KPIs, our key performance indicators, and that's all on me because everything trickles down from the top. And if they didn't think that I was totally dialed in, I think that their work reflects that, even though they were still rock stars. Does that make sense? So I will be back to team meetings. I'm going to, make every intention to be on our Wednesday team meetings again for this calendar year. So that was point number 3. Point number 4, thing that I stunk at last year that I believe directly affected our revenue and why we went backwards is that I just did not want to be on social media. And the backstory is this. Back in the day, Facebook and Instagram were an absolute delight for me. I loved being on them, especially when I had my painting company because content was easy. I probably post more content on like my bougie on the beach Instagram than I do, any of my other places. I'm getting really hot, by the way. I'm going to take this off. In fact, I'm just gonna, okay. I know it's snowing outside, but the lights make me hot. So, but I probably post more on Bougie on the Beach just because it's fun content. It's beach, it's waves, it's, fun colors, all those things. After, being on Facebook 16 years, I think I've been on Facebook and Instagram, and whenever Instagram for Business started, I was there. And watching the changes over the years and seeing reach decline. I'm giving you all these excuses, by the way, but I'm also going to tidy it up with there is no excuse. And then 2020 hitting. When 2020 hit, my hair was also falling out. Some of you have followed me long enough that you remember that. The pandemic hit just a few weeks before my first book was published. My 12 city tour was canceled across the United States. I just in the last couple of months finally got rid of some of the clothes from my book tour. Because in my head, I was going to wear a different outfit for all 12 cities. So, I have these gorgeous suits and um, Calvin Klein dresses and, fancy crap upstairs that still have all the tags on it because we had an event to launch my book that had to go virtual. We had the 12 city book tour get canceled, all the radio and television that went along with that. It was just a really hard time for me. And then my hair was falling out. So I thought it would also be a really great time to like get off all supplements and stop all of my hormones in the event that maybe one of those things was causing my hair to fall out, which then caused me also to put on about 30 pounds. Jason had his accident right after that. And so between COVID, Jason's accident, menopause, all the things, I literally gained 30 pounds. And I'm down the majority of that, by the way, but it's taken me 18 stinking months, but still like, it was just kind of a hard time. And I found myself just not wanting to show up on social media because I was a chunky monkey and my hair was falling out. And when I say hair is falling out, some of you have followed me long enough. You remember, like everybody, like if you're watching me on YouTube right now, it was like, okay, it wasn't quite that short, but it was like, okay, if I'm looking at the length of my hair now, my hair was to here, but it also was like so thin, you guys, that I would look in the mirror and I just didn't recognize myself. So the very last thing that I wanted to do was get on social media. And then I think the truth is that after doing something for so long, there's a part of me inside that feels rebellious. And then it's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to post on Facebook. I don't want to worry about reach. I don't want to do your dumb stinking reels, Instagram. I don't. I want to figure out how to build my business in a different way so that I don't have to show up with my face every day. And that's the opposite though of what I would teach most of my clients to do. And so if I'm looking at revenue for 2024 and I'm like, okay, what are the reasons that it's down? This is one of them. Because 100% of your sales in an online business, 100% of your sales are going to come from email and social media posts. And I stunk at, well, I didn't stink at email, but I stunk at social media. I stunk at 50%, one of the two. It's not that I wasn't posting, but I was posting more things that would have a decent reach, a funny meme, something personal, something with faith, and less about business. Because in case you don't know this, but it's way easier to get people to talk back to you about non-business posts. And it just like the business posts take more brain power. It makes me sit down and like really think about it. And so, I was posting a lot more about like crunchy makeup and, the new condo we just bought in Florida. And that was way more fun for me. But then I also can't be shocked. Like I might have had way more fun on social media, but I can't be shocked then that revenue is down. Like Jen, you can't have it both ways. And so I would say to those of you who also felt like last year your revenue didn't end up where you wanted to, let me ask you, check your social. How'd you do? Because what I've taught people for years and years is you got to be consistent. And I wasn't. What I've taught people for years and years, you got to be on Facebook every single day. What I've taught people for years is that you've got to do reels. And so then I also can't be surprised that things went backwards, right? Because you literally can't have it both ways, and neither can I. All right. So that is another reason why we went backwards. I sucked it up when it came to social media. So I'm really going to make a good intention to get back to consistency, get back to positioning myself as an expert in online business in 2024, because I still believe I am. And even though I would rather post about wallpaper selections for, bougie on Miramar Beach, the truth is that's not what pays the bills. And so if I want revenue to go back up and exceed even, where we had originally shot for, I'm just going to have to get back to doing the basics. And so I need to get back to like Facebook posts daily, reels on Instagram. I already do stories daily on Instagram because that's easy for me. But do I want to do it? No. But do I also want to get back to the revenue that we were at the year before? Absolutely. So you will be seeing me doing that, which brings us to the last thing that I really stunk at last year. So I felt like I took my eyes off some of the very basic things that grow your business online. Like one of those things is social media, right? But the other is growing an email list. Okay. So if we go back to the two ways your business makes money if you have an online business, it's through your email list and it's through your social media posts. Okay. we have different links that we give people in emails than what I do a lot of times on our social media. So Nell, being the numbers wizard that she is, has been able to, for years, go back and see where our sales are coming from. 75% of the sales we make here in my coaching company come from my email list. They don't come from my social media. Every 3 out of 4 sales we make, every 750,000 out of every million I make online is coming from email, not from social media. Okay. So, and we've got well over 100,000 people on my email list. Nell and I were talking the other day. We think we have had 250,000 email subscribers, but we clean our list out a lot. So, it's at 100,000 or so. We send emails regularly. Like, I'm still consistent upon that. My team is still consistent with that. They still, send things out weekly. We still are super good at sending out a lot of emails when we're launching, et cetera. But here's where I failed with email. I failed to grow my list size. So I told Nell, I know that I didn't do a good job at this. I know that we did a great job in consistency, but it's my job to grow the list. It's my job to come up with ways to get people on our list. So new freebies, new opt-ins, and then to promote them. Like, you can have a great freebie, but if you never promote them, how's anybody know about it? Right. And so the way the funnel works, and if you're watching me right now on YouTube, you're going to see this. If you're listening on the podcast app, you're missing me on YouTube. I've got halfway naked, by the way. Now I'm going to take off my socks because sorry, Easton, I'm not actually getting naked. That would be awkward since you're my son. Okay, but I'm having hot flashes. And I'm postmenopausal, so I shouldn't be having hot flashes. But anywho, so if you look at my hands on YouTube, okay, so if you have this many social media followers, okay, this many of them are probably on your email list. And this many of them probably do things like listen to your podcast, read your book, buy something from you. Okay. So you'll always have more people following you on social and less people on your email list, usually 9 times out of 10, and less people who buy. That's just the way the funnel works. Okay. So what you need to focus on is, if we're doing regular list cleanouts, which means if somebody hasn't engaged with an email from me, if they haven't opened it in 6 months, we're getting them off my list because it costs to send stuff out. Right. I have to constantly, if my social media is growing, especially, be growing the email list with new people, because otherwise you're just sending the same emails. I'm just sending the same emails over and over and over again to the same people. So I had Nell go back and actually come up with our numbers. And I did grow my email list last year by a little over 11,000 people. But in the past, we've grown it 20 to 30,000 people in a year. So I was half what I normally do. In terms of promoting opt-ins enough, coming up with opt-ins that you guys need and want when you're in business, I stunk at it, clearly, because we grew at 50% of what we do in a normal year. So then I can't be shocked when I'm stinking at social media posting and I'm stinking at growing my email list. I can't be shocked the revenue went backwards. I mean, it's all like in black and white, right? And so, another way you can get people on your email list is to really put some ad spend, some Facebook and Instagram ads, pointed at an opt-in versus just getting people to buy your course, buy your coaching, your consulting package, or whatever. It's way cheaper if you run Facebook ads and get people on your list. And again, it's so you get your social media people, which is this big, onto your list so then you can sell to them, right? And so we have decent opt-ins. I just didn't promote them enough. We probably could have used a couple of new ones. I didn't do it. So we were just sending emails to the same people over and over and over. And I know, and I teach that growing an email list is one of the most reliable ways, one of the most sustainable ways for you to build and sustain a profitable business. It just is. And so I told my team, I will commit to growing the list this year. I will. We're going to have more opt-ins, also known as lead magnets. They are doing a great job still with consistency, and even though 11,000 new email addresses is fine, there would have been years when I would have been thrilled by that. It's less than half of what we normally do. So we're going back to building the list in 2025. We're going back to it. And so if you're somebody that needs to grow your email list, my team and I, we have come up with something because we're going to hold ourselves accountable. We'll hold you accountable too. I'm going to do a free challenge, totally free, January 21 through the 23rd. So that's 3 different days. And it's totally free for you guys. It's called an idea to opt-in challenge. So what we're going to do over the course of those 3 days is we are going to go over ways that you can come up with good opt-ins, because I'm really good at that. Nell and I together are freaking geniuses at coming up with freebies. But I want to brainstorm for us, what opt-ins could we do for quarter 1 that are brand new? And I want to help you do the same. We're going to talk about like who you really want to attract, what they really need, and how to create a killer opt-in, like how to do it step by step with no tech stress, no overwhelm, and then how to get that out to the world so you can get more people onto your email list. You can go to jenniferallwood.com/challenge to sign up for those 3 days. Again, that's January 21 through the 23rd. But I'm literally going to be doing the work with you, because this has got to go back to being a priority for me, in order to get back to what we were the year before in revenue. And so that was a really vulnerable podcast episode, friends. Would you do me a solid? If this was helpful for you and you know anybody else in business who does not already subscribe to my podcast, would you forward this to them? If you are listening on YouTube, would you just take 3 seconds and leave a comment below? If you've never left me a podcast review and would do that, I would really love if you did that. It helps, other people ask me to be on their podcast or me to get really great guests on this one. So please do that for me if you would. And I'd love it if you join me for that opt-in challenge. We're going to take your idea and turn it into an opt-in. And again, that's January 21 through 23. Go to jenniferallwood.com/challenge, totally free to you. There is like an upgrade if you want to get a workbook, if you want to do the VIP room where I pray and will answer your questions, you can certainly upgrade to that. Of course, I would love it if you did that, but the challenge itself is free and you should be there. So was that helpful, friends? I hope that encouraged your heart. I hope that made you look at your own business just a little bit differently. Maybe it caused just a seed to be planted in your mind of something you need to work on for 2025. But I'm always going to commit to try to be as much of an open book to you guys as I can. I think it's beneficial both for you and for me. Humbling in a way, but also that's really good too, right? Because pride comes before a fall. None of us want that action. So much love to you. We'll see you soon, you guys. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye. Easton. Oh my gosh, it's so hot in here. Why is it so hot? Literally blizzard right here out the window.